Well, hello, good evening. Welcome to Sports Today. We've seen some incredible action at the Euro 2020 already with the round of 16 done and dusted. Some major upsets there, some stunning results. France are out. Remember, the world champions, defending champions, Portugal are out. Germany couldn't get past England. Well, you couldn't quite call that a surprise. But the fact is that we are four really big teams missing out. The Netherlands, they look so good in the group stages, has been some roller coaster ride. Of course, we'll also look ahead to the quarterfinals briefly, the quarterfinals which begin from tomorrow. Which teams would are looking likeliest to go through to the semifinals? There's been some scintillating football at the Euro 2020 the last few weeks. I have with me, of course, the usual suspects on Sports Today to discuss football. With me, Chinmoy Roy, Chirag, and Shuman, who've been with us through our Euro coverage. It's been a pleasure discussing football with you, gentlemen. But this is the business end. This is hotting up all right and proper. Chirag, who would have thought
Mhm.
at the start of the tournament that you would play the quarterfinal without France, without Portugal, possibly without Germany making a serious impact, and of course all the Netherlands. Like I said, they looked so good in the group stages. This is disconcerting, isn't it, for the big three of European football, the big four of European football, especially looking ahead into the World Cup year next. It's going to be some task for these to get back up. How do you see the way forward for these four, Chirag?
It's a big disappointment for them. Of course, I think there's a lot of rebuilding to be done.
Hmm.
The one thing I think that talking about the World Cup year coming up, and on the back of the Euros, I think the squads have been very strong.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take away from the opponents that they've played. They've
Hmm.
played some very strong opponents who have deserved to get their position. Nothing came out of luck.
Hmm.
We often write off underdogs, and we've seen in the Euros this year that it's been a tournament of underdogs, and they've deserved it. It's not been last minute chances. Even though Ukraine came in quite close against Sweden in the last game. Um, but yeah, if you're talking specifically about, let's just call them the big four, which are now no longer part of the tournament, they would be utterly disappointed. If you were to look at Germany, Germany's been struggling for a number of tournaments now. So this would be another disappointment for them. And on the back of losing to England, which is, for them, the guys are down in Germany as well. It's a big matter. France, I think, is going to be the worst hit in terms of not just in the squad, but even with Didier Deschamps, but more so in terms of the way they play football, or the way they played this tournament. I think there was a lot of expectation in terms of how France would play like they did during the World Cup, where they will grind for results. I think, and I mentioned this in our previous episode, that there's 25 minutes after Switzerland missed the penalty where France actually played like what one would expect France to play. They scored 3 goals, but we didn't see France for any other second for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
And so forth with the other guys as well. Portugal had a very difficult group, but
Hmm.
they came through.
Hmm.
And I think they came close with Belgium. It wasn't a very easy game for them in any sphere of the imagination. So yes, bitter disappointment, but a lot to work on, a lot to build up to next year in Qatar.
Hmm.
I think this would be a wake up call for a lot of them, especially France.
Hmm.
The Dutch came into this a bit of an underdog. No one really wrote about much about the Dutch. They didn't really see them going through as much. So yes, it's a bitter pill to swallow because they lost in a match where they would have probably been favorites. They were favorites. However, I think it's the French that are going to go home the most unhappy amongst the four. And as a football fan as well, I was quite disappointed to see that they didn't really turn up. They didn't turn up, unfortunately.
Right. And before the tournament, talking about pre-tournament favorites, France were always one of the pre-tournament favorites heading into Euro
Hmm.
20. Come on, to take on from what Chirac said, bitterly disappointed France, and Mbappe would be one player regretting that moment. Remember, there's also another man involved in the Euro now, Gareth Southgate, who'd remember what he did 25 years ago, that moment must have stuck on with him. And until he comes home for England, we'll also talk about that. He'll probably, keep regretting and ruining that moment. But that, uh, how as a football comment, you've covered the first sport for so many years. What would have exactly been going through when those emotions, those highs and lows of sport?
Well, honestly, talking about France and Switzerland, I mean, you just mentioned about it. Yes, we discussed about it. I mean, the brand of football Switzerland were playing at that point of time. In fact, even in the group stage as well, it was literally an impossible task unless and until you have uh, two super quick fullbacks or super quick wingers on both the flanks. Otherwise, it's very difficult because the Switzerland head coach don't allow the fullbacks to go for the overlaps. That has been their hallmark of the game. And that is the reason why I said the other day, like there can be an upset on the cards because we all know that Ousmane Dembele was injured, so he was not available. Kingsley Coman had hamstring, despite the fact that Didier Deschamps forced him to play that game because it was a massively important game for them. As long as he was there on the pitch, France looked threatening. The moment linked off, France started to become a bit defensive. And we all know, like Seferovic, he's a kind of a player who always prefers the ball in the air. In the aerial balls, he's very, very dangerous. France invited them to cash in the opportunity. If you see the couple of goals which they scored early, there was no
Yeah.
marking. It was three headers. That was one reason. Coming back to Kylian Mbappe, we all know how prolific goal scorer he has been both for the club and for the national team. The best young prospect of the last World Cup. We all know what he's capable of. But it happens at times. I mean, we have seen the best of the world to miss penalties. Even Messi and Ronaldo missed penalties as well. But more than that, what I felt the other day, Kylian Mbappe somehow was overbogged down by the pressure of the situation. It was monumental. Everyone was talking about it. Hasn't been his particular competition. We all thought that Kylian Mbappe would be running the show, but we all saw like except a couple of assists, he hardly capitalized the chances which he got. Even at the game against Switzerland, the ball which he got, it was just Jan Sommer in front of him. He could have slotted it home had it been there, one PSG shot with him. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, and that happens to each and every footballer in the world. Coming back to Gareth Southgate, well, being an England fan, it has always been an upset for me over the years. Every time since 1998, ever since I've started watching the game, I always expected England to perform well. We had some outstanding defenders over the years, outstanding midfielders over the years, but unfortunately, apart from a few like Wayne Rooney, Michael Owen, Emil Heskey, Alan Shearer in 1998, of course, but after that, not much. We haven't seen such galaxy of stars in the upfront. It was a kind of a terrible call for the English gaffer as well to make a choice. You have one of the finest right-wing forwards, Jadon Sancho, in your team, and in the first game, he didn't even get a place, but there on the bench. You have
Right.
players like Calvert-Lewin, who was absolutely brilliant for Everton this season, not getting any chance. I don't know whether he'll be getting a chance or not. Marcus Rashford sitting on the bench. You have Phil Foden sitting on the bench. You have Jack Grealish sitting on the bench. Bukayo Saka, I think his selection the other day was absolutely a masterstroke. We all know that he also plays as a left fullback. So usually, if you see the way he took the decision of fielding the side against Germany, there were a lot of criticism. Like, a team is coming up with 8 defensive players in the first team, but that is how he wanted to frustrate the German side. 3 defenders, Kyle Walker, and then Harry Maguire and John Stones, outright centre backs. 4 midfielders actually. On the right, we saw Trippier, who usually is a right fullback or a left fullback, a defensive player. At the heart of the defense, Kelvin Phillips and Declan Rice, both are used as a defensive option. And on the left, we have seen Luke Shaw to play, who is also a left fullback. So 7 outright defensive players, plus the player who was playing on the right flank. Bukayo Saka usually plays as a left fullback for Arsenal. So 8 players, and every time when they were just coming down, they were defending. Every time when they were going at least 5, 6 in numbers and using the physicality. So it was game won off the pitch rather than on the pitch.
No, and there was a lot of psychological battle expected as well. And I'm coming straight to Chinmoy around the England-Germany game as well. From what Chinmoy said, he said he doesn't like the English football team. It would have been interesting to also put him there at Wembley and see if he could, standing there under Wembley Way, under the stairways of Wembley Way, and say that, maybe do a live from there. That would get some virality, by the way, Chinmoy. But credit to the English team there. But Germany would be, taking back again. Joachim Low's career, this 15-year-old reign has come to an end. Also, would the Germans be, I know you like German football, you follow German football, Chinma, you have a soft corner. But would it be also an overstretch to say that, they might now be looking beyond Thomas Müller? He's only 31, 32. But would they be, is his international career now under the radar? Would they be doing some thorough post-mortem around it?
Yes, I think days with Muller, I think this must have been his swan song. That's this Euro. Now, I coming to your point first, my sincere appreciation to not appreciation really. I am really marveled by the prediction Suman made. I think you are spot on. Who would have put money on Switzerland? He only put his money. So that's amazing. That Swiss will win against France. Now, I have got a few questions really. Like, Spain had a golden time. France won in 2018. I'm not saying they're the players they have got are aging and all, but is this a question mark that this team is also, for example, Deschamps? There's a lot of criticism about the way he handled the team. Think about Otto Griezmann being taken off because he took it for granted that we have won the match. We're 3-1 up. How can you take off your playmaker? Now that's an utterly defensive approach that I'll put one defender, right? So he brought in one defender instead of Griezmann. I believe, okay, fine, that Benzema hadn't, Karim Benzema had a injury issue, so he limped off. That's fine. So I think France from this tournament is not going to take anything. I think they have to do a lot of soul searching. Okay, now coming, one thing has been made very clear, proven in this Euro, is that the FIFA ranking at time doesn't stand. You can have a look at it. The 8 teams have got into the quarterfinals. 3 of them are rank outsiders. Talk about Czech, Ukraine, and one more is Switzerland, right? So we have seen in the big tournaments that the ranking doesn't come into play always, right? That's a huge thing. And talking about all the 8 teams, I think that one person who really who stood out is Spain, Enrique, because he has got a great amount of flack, but he stood by what he see in a press conference when Morata was really under the hammer. He was asked about Morata. He said that my first team, Morata and 10 others. So he stood by. And Morata has really paid it back. He scored that goal. And you see in the tournament, if you ask me, I don't know whether Suman will agree or not. The most wonderful display of football was by Spain, I think. And that game against Croatia, I think that will stand out. I know France and Switzerland was also equally good, but I think the standout game, Suman, I don't know, Chirag will also agree, that Spain versus Croatia, the way they played Spain, that's the beauty of it, right? So if you ask me that till the pre-quarterfinal stage, what has been the takeaway? I would say that one person who fought against all this, Luis Enrique, he could prove that if you stick with that correct thing, right? I would say correct. He is not dogmatic. For example, Didier Deschamps, he was fiddling around a lot of things and he got caught. You look at this one, because Deschamps is being trying to, I said that who comes first? Is it your tactics or your player? Now, I felt that looking at Deschamps, he always thought about his own technique rather than giving the players the freedom to play. And he was found really, the way the results shows. Even in the group league, France didn't play that well. So they are struggling from there. There was not that fluidity. Whereas Spain kept improving. The last group match, they smashed 5-0. And they are now, I think they are now moving, they're on a roll. So if you look at it, I find also Switzerland can be a great threat, the way they played, right? So if you ask me, what are the takeaway? The losers will be France. They have a lot of soul searching to do. We always say thumbs up and thumbs down. Thumbs down to France, thumbs up to Spain.
Now, especially that last several minutes of the Euro 20 campaign, France will have nightmares for some time unless they can, reverse it dramatically and defend the World Championship next year in Qatar. But there's also questions coming in, pouring in about Germany. Chirag, Ruthvik Bhatt is asking what's wrong with the Germans. What are they doing in the last couple of tournaments? And he's also asking whether they can come back stronger in Qatar. And what's your take on how is it? How do you see the way forward now, and what's gone wrong with these guys?
One thing we have to understand, which is very different in football from club football to country football, is if a club is in transition, when players retire or players are aging, one can go out and buy new players and work on their grassroots to try and make them get better over the next couple of seasons. When it comes to country football, there is no transfer market. You can't go into the transfer market and try and get in players to fill in a position. The German national team has been in transition for a while. It's not that they have a lack of players or the league is not good enough. They've been in transition for a while. Now, whether or not that has got to do anything with managerial styles or formations going a bit stale, maybe to a certain extent. I think in 2010, 2014, the sort of performances that they would have had then versus the performance that they're having now in 2018 and 2020, they're very different, even though the playing styles might be the same. But football has changed a lot. I mean, even up to 3 years ago, you wouldn't have expected mid-tier teams playing from the back. Goalkeepers today behave like center backs as opposed to before. You have wing backs who are now not just going up and down, but they're also coming in and playing in center midfield. You've got the likes of someone like Fernandinho who can play center back and center midfield in the same game and do two roles in one game. Football's not the same. And I think the Germans have not adapted to that, and they've not adapted to that strength. I would like to touch upon what Shumon mentioned in the England game about England fielding majority of players who were defensive. I think a lot of the reason behind that is because the Germans have very strong wing backs, and that's why they did that. They played three at the back for the first time in the tournament, but they're very adaptive, which the Germans were not. But at the same time, the English won that game just because they had some level of positivity after Grealish came on. So having played seven players and having a very strong midfield, I still would have wanted to see Grealish come on a bit earlier. I think the English would have had more goals in them. I don't think the scoreline would have been 2-0. Muller got a very good opportunity towards the end of that game, which he should have finished. But I think it wouldn't have mattered if the likes of a Grealish or someone else would have been on. More so Grealish, or maybe even a Sancho would have come on a bit earlier. I think there is the English team, along with the Belgian team in this tournament now, when we're talking about the next stages, it's really for them to lose it more than anything else. They have such a strong squad. I think they're getting into their next gear. They've got several gears that they can change, and I think they're getting into that phase with both of those squads. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the next couple of days pan out when it comes to the football that we're going to watch. I would also like to mention that I think the Czech Republic and the Danish game is going to be the most watched game out of the four. The way the Czechs played against the Netherlands, and the way Denmark has gone through this tournament, from the first game, the troubles that they faced, and all the hoo-ha around the whole incident that happened with Christian Eriksen, a lot of teams would have just been subdued. They would have taken a back step. People would have understood if they didn't perform or show up, right? These guys didn't. They showed audacity. They showed courage, which goes back to my previous point. The underdogs in this tournament deserve to be where they are. They've not been lucky or pushovers in any sense.
And it's been a long tournament. We remember what happened when Christian Eriksen collapsed, and the fact that Denmark lost that game for them to bounce back and be in this position. You're absolutely right. In fact, Chandan Taka had this question on Denmark versus the Czech Republic. I hope you got a teaser into that game. Of course, we'll preview. We'll do a preview show hours before that, day after tomorrow. But Shuman also, to look back, look ahead into the quarterfinals, the teams that have gone through. Spain, for instance, we've seen what they've gone. We've spoken enough about them. 2008, 2010, 2012. From then, that downward slide. Is it also now? Chirag mentioned England and Belgium very rightly, probably among the two favorites heading into the quarterfinals, but also Spain. This is their chance to rise, and this is as good a chance it's been for them taking on. They're taking on their opponents tomorrow. That's the first game to open with. But how do you see that placed? And Switzerland will be revved up after that game too. So it's going to be a very fascinating contest.
Indeed, and more importantly, I mean, as Chirag rightly mentioned, one fact I was just discussing before the start of the show as well, like England, I'm highly hopeful. For another reason is like it might seem a bit identical, but in terms of the UEFA Nations Cup rather, they conceded the second lowest goals. So in terms of the defensive ploy, I mean, I don't think Grealish or the other players will come straight away into the side because this is the mindset and the strategy of Gareth Southgate. And since 1966, this has been the first time England haven't conceded a single goal in their first 4 games. And the last time when they did it, they won the World Cup. So, and when they have someone like Harry Maguire and John Stones at the back of the back three, actually, I mean, this is something very inspiring. Coming back to tomorrow's game, as you have just mentioned, I mean, Switzerland versus Spain. I think it would be once again a very, very tactical battle. And this Spanish side, they picked at the right time. The first couple of games, as I mentioned in my previous show as well, like, I mean, Spain, they were creating everything. 85% of the ball position, over 70% of the ball position in the second game as well. Somehow the goal was not coming. And for a striker, Chirag would be knowing it, and Chinmoyda will also be knowing it. Like for a striker, as I mentioned the previous day as well, like when it's not coming, it's not coming. But when you keep on trying in front of the goal, creating chances, it's just like a bottle of ketchup. It just comes like anything. And that is what exactly happened with them. I mentioned the other day as well, like Luis Enrique, in terms of the defensive ploy, he hasn't been that good in terms of his club managerial career as well. He concedes a lot of goals as a manager, but at the same time, his attacking mindset also allows the team to score a lot of goals. Same thing happened the other day as well, 3-all and then 5-3. High-scoring games, that has been a hallmark about his managerial career as a club manager as well. Now coming back to Switzerland, once again, tomorrow's game would be very much a seesaw battle in a different way, because Switzerland, I somehow feel like they would be playing in a 4-5-1 combination with just Shaqiri on the up front. And Seferovic would be playing as a withdrawn, actually. So if that happens, once again, Seferovic and Shaqiri, they will play as a false 9. And this will make a lot of problems if Eric Garcia plays on the heart of the defense. I somehow feel like Pau Torres should start against Switzerland because of his cool head. And he's very, very good when the ball is on the ground. And Shaqiri, Seferovic, if they play in a false 9 combination with a flurry of passes which they play on the heart of the midfield, I think it would be very, very important for Switzerland's perspective as well. I mean, if they get Eric Garcia, it would be a bit easier compared to have a defense where there would be Pau Torres on the heart of the defense, because Pau Torres and his combination with Aymeric Laporte is brilliant. I'd be really looking forward to Jordi Alba and Azpilicueta, because these two fullbacks, as we have seen throughout the competition as well, they have been the best two fullbacks which we have seen. If you keep Luke Shaw in a competition as well, but these two players have been absolutely brilliant, and they are playing as an attacking option for Spain. And if they do that against Switzerland as well, it will be a tough call for Switzerland tomorrow.
Absolutely, undoubtedly, Spain will be among one of those teams that you'd want to look forward to, and especially when you look back a month ago when he had to explain that Sergio Ramos selection, and in fact the entire squad selection around the Spanish side, and of course that death threats to Morata. So alongside Denmark, there's been another story to track was Spain. We'll discuss all of that in depth before the game tomorrow as well. But Chirag, Chinmoy, the other team would be of interest to a lot of fans around the world would be the Italians. They're again, we've discussed their style of football, the way they have come through the tournament. It's been good to see the underdogs also fight, like all of you mentioned. Also, always good to see the underdogs punch above their weight in sports, but then also taking on the Italians. That would be another fascinating game. There'll be plenty of emotions running riot for that one.
True, and especially for the fact that Italy of yesteryears was very defensive, Catanaccio and all these things. People were very boring. See, they won the World Cup in 2006, Marcelo Lippi. But we really remember Zidane really hitting the defender. That's more because Italy had an eternal style of defensive. They lacked that dazzling. I mean, see, we remember some of the teams because of the style of the football they play, the enjoyment they bring in. 1970 Brazil, 1974 total football Holland. We all remember 1998 the way French played. Okay, then Spain 2010. No matter what Chirag and Suman was talking about, left right back going up, England having 7 defenders, always a defensive mindset this English has got, and they have always had the habit of doing well pre-quarter, quarter, and then they will stumble. I don't know whether this time or not, but that's their way of looking forward. That's why they talk so much, and they have got only one trophy in the cabinet to show, that is 1966. Okay, and you talk about some of the great teams, their style of play, never England comes in. Okay, so that's the sad part of it. Now, think why I've got liking for the Spain is that a kind of football they showed. Okay, see, I know the result matters at the end. Italy, I mean, in the yesteryears, Italy will struggle, but they will 1-0. The result matters. But we all remember in Brazil, there was one way. What is their defense? Attack is the defense. Okay, they say our way of defense is score one more goal, right? That's what as a crowd we all want to see. Really, 90 minutes, 7 defenders. Okay, I don't know really. I don't like it. I would always, so in my book, as you said, Italy looks to be very good this year. I love their way. They have blended their defense with offense. Insigne, Ciro Immobile, all these guys are doing very well. Okay, Locatelli, some of the guys. So I love Italy. I mean, I didn't have a liking for Italy. I'm liking them. Belgium, of course, though they have got 2 injury issues now. De Bruyne and Hazard. Hazard is perilously injured. As I said, he said that I don't know whether my ankle will ever be back like what I did in Chelsea. But still, Belgium has a potent force. So Italy, Belgium will all enjoy. Favorite of Suman is Switzerland. But I think my Spain will show them how to play good football.
No, we'll come to all of yes, Suman. Yes, go on.
Yeah, just one thing I want to add. As Alex Ferguson said, attack win you games, defense win you titles. I'll be rooting for England.
It'll be also fascinating to see that in the Italian-Belgian game also, Spinazzola taking on that Belgian defense there. We'll see, of course, also the Chireni comes back, right? Because after missing out
it's a big
couple
call.
of group games. That'll be another call to want to look forward to. So before we go there, though, we've, of course, like we said, we've analyzed a few of those upsets in the round of 16, looking ahead a little to the quarterfinals. But before we go, we'll start with Chirag, Shuman, and we'll also go to Chinmoy. Who are your favorites? Who do you see? I'm not asking for specific lineups like we did for the round of 16, but who do you see? Who do you see the hot favorites alongside in the quarterfinals heading into the last 4? Chirag, if you take that first.
I think this tournament is for honestly the Belgians to lose. I think even without Hazard and De Bruyne, they have a lot of potential in midfield. To really come through, and I think they have a couple of gears to go. Genuinely, if England don't get to the finals, I do not know what else to say, because they should be getting to the finals. It's not going to be easy. The Ukrainians against the Swedes had a decent game. The Swedes obviously hit the post several times. They got unlucky, but the Ukrainians kept fighting. They pack their midfield. They get 5 across the park. I think the English can break them down and then move on to the semis and the final. So I think Belgium, England final is what I would think we will see. But then again, as opposed to Shumon, I've been horrible with my predictions. So please don't count me on my predictions. But if I'd be very surprised if we don't get Belgium and England in the final. I think Italy will play really well in their system that they play. They will frustrate the Belgians. That's a game that is going to be more of a that will go into extra time. I feel the Belgian Italy game. But yeah, if I had to put my money on someone to win this, it would probably be the Belgians.
Okay, then Belgian. I'll try and get a contrarian lineup out of Chinmoy there. But Shumon, is it coming home for England? Belgium, England. How do you see this panning out? There is, of course, there'll be strong challenges from Italy as well. Belgium after facing Italy, and then there is Spain also, who I somehow don't want to write off. There's some sense of nostalgia back in the 2010 World Cup, and hopefully, of course, with the change of play and with everything that's gone around them, I want them to write a bit of a story. So, is it coming home there, Shumon?
Of course, I mean, for England's perspective, with the brand of football they have been playing for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, I met the head coach of under 17 English side when they came to India, and I really had a long conversation with Mr. Pierce, and he told me a very interesting story. I mean, the revamp of English football started back in 2012, starting from the under 14 to the first team. They play in a similar formation in the football center at St. George's Park. They play in the same shape. Their mindset has been the same. And more importantly, the brand of football which they play is very much the same. So they don't have any problem in fitting into a new age group or a new team altogether when it comes in terms of the national team. And that has been identical. In 2017, they have won the Under-17 World Cup as well. A lot of players are there in the team. A few other players who haven't got it to the first team, but also they have been fantastic. Now coming back to the Italy versus Belgium game. Well, honestly, according to me, the two best tacticians of this Euro Cup would be facing against each other. Roberto Martinez versus Roberto Mancini. Two brilliant tacticians, and it would be a seesaw battle once again. I mean, it can be anybody's game. Don't write off Italy. Once again, I'm saying the same thing. Yes, as Chirag rightly mentioned, that despite the fact that there won't be Kevin De Bruyne and Eden Hazard, there won't be any trouble, because in the first couple of games as well, they hardly got the service of these two. Of course, Dries Mertens and Yannick Carrasco would be playing. Then Donker can come as a substitute. So this is the thing. So in terms of the team, it can be a game won off the field rather than on the field once again, like the France versus Switzerland game. Second comes Spain. Very, very interesting game tomorrow. I'm sure that Spain would be starting as favorites to that game. I'm sure that it will bring a smile on the face of Chinmoy, but I'm sure. I mean, Spain will start as favorites for tomorrow's game for sure. But I mean, two teams, as Chirag rightly mentioned, I'm also betting on these two teams. England versus Belgium final. England taking the cup away.
Right. So he says it could come home. And Chinmoy, let's see. Let's tweak this a little. What are the likely upsets that you see heading in? Switzerland versus Spain. Switzerland going through, that would be a bit of a, wouldn't say upset, but again, that'll be something that it's okay for us journalists to look at headlines like that. Then of course, Belgium taking on Italy. That will be a sizzler there with both teams.
See, one of the critics of football was asked, which two teams? First, I tell you one thing. Now I've got a point to prove. Fabio Capello, he was asked a question to compare between Messi and Ronaldo. Now, Capello said, Ronaldo speaks English. Messi speaks football. That's the difference, So, an expert was asked, I'm giving you money and you buy a ticket for which team? It was in 1970s. Which team you're going to buy the money for? Brazil playing and England playing. Trust me, that's the right question. He said Brazil. So if I'm a crowd, I will always love to see Spain, right? I'm a spectator. I'll always like to see the thing might happen really. This disaster, this upsets, and a part of it. But as a football lover, I would always love to see Spain, right? And I'd always love to see Czech Republic also. I don't know. England is an eternal favorite. If they go through, well, God save them. But I've still got my question marks. I still got my question marks. And the worst thing about England is that you see, last day Harry Kane just 2 touches in the first half, and he did well, and he got that goal, and now he's a hero and all these things. I don't like that. Raheem Sterling should have been held more. The way he played, I think Raheem Sterling stood out. Every time he got the ball, he seems to be creating something. But in England, I don't know really. Somebody plays well, somebody will be put in. That's a way of putting at it.
Chinmay will
media,
have a
the
kind
press,
word. Chinmay will have a kind word for the Three Lions when they lift it up eventually, when they lift the trophy. Otherwise, no sweetness from Chinmay around England. He just, he
No, but
hates that England
that's
football team.
that's the thing about the English team this time
Yeah.
round versus any other time that I've seen them play, at least, is they're very versatile, or they can do that. They can be defensive when they need to be. They can be offensive when they need to be. Right?
Absolutely.
We've seen the defensive side because that's the sort of players, that's the sort of opponent they were playing. Harry Kane had 2 touches on the ball because that's just how they lined up. Harry Kane couldn't get off the ball because he was up against three centre backs, 3 very, very tall, very, very experienced centre
You've
backs.
got all this ready, right? Englishman has got all this. All these English people have got their own logic, all justification, this and that. He couldn't even get the ball, man. That's the fact. That is the fact of the matter.
No.
The last 5 seasons, we have always seen Harry Kane finishing off the season with 35 plus goals. That is an incredible record. Apart from Robert Lewandowski, there is not even a single player who has done that over the
Not a
years.
spectacular, not even one to remember, really. Yes, scored a goal. That we remember.
No, Chinmoy, you're right in terms of entertainment, but at the end of the day, it's the result. Harry Kane also got the most number of assists along with the most number of goals last season. That's a ridiculous fact. I don't remember. I
none of the assists.
Look,
well,
either which way,
it's a
gentlemen,
question of
it's going to be a very,
it's a
it's going to
question
be a very
of
emotional night.
how it's going to turn out. Yeah, of course.
Indeed is, and it's going to be a very emotional night tomorrow, day after tomorrow as well for English fans. They're taking on Ukraine. Imagine crashing out of the quarterfinals with a defeat to Ukraine after that performance. That'll be like, there you go. So you'll see both sides of reactions. We have to send Chinmay. We have to send Chinmay sometime to Wembley, maybe to this, to just.
And that's why they have put Wembley, no? They thought that the last way to win it, they have the crowd support, get it to a Wembley.
Don't scream standard like the German media.
Yeah, like the Rome wasn't built in a day. The next venue would be Rome. And this English team started getting together from 2012. So it took us time to reach Rome. And when we have reached Rome, you can be rest assured that we are going with the trophy.
Chirag, those emotions are coming into play straight away. Look at Chinmay's reaction. Chinmay is like, we took time to get there to Rome from Wembley. So it's all heating up on sports today. Of course, there'll be plenty more action.
But I interrupt. What is your take?
Yes.
What is Rajoshi's takes? Every time he just throws the ball in our court.
I honestly want, before I went to Shuman, I honestly want Spain to make a real bet out of it, because it's going to be a story. It's going to be a story if they do it. Remember everything that happened around Luis Enrique, everything around the selection, the controversy, Real Madrid, Morata. They're getting threads around. We used to hear of those a lot back in the late 80s, 1990s, 2021. It shows you the passion. I mean, it's not, we're not endorsing that at all. But it still shows you to an extent the passion and the pressure that these guys play under. So that'll be I'm putting my money on Spain for some reason. Shuman says right of the Italians. Absolutely agree. Chirag, 100% Belgium and Italy. Of course, you, Chinmay. From what you said, it seems like whoever wins, it's fine as long as England don't lift the cup for you.
Yeah,
that's the sense I get out of Chinmay's assessment. So we're all
the thing about the Spanish this year, though, they're which I found very interesting. They're not playing like they used to before. This is a very different Spanish squad. This is a very different. Can you imagine this? This is the first time we've had a Spanish squad where there's not a single player from Real Madrid. The way they've built this up and the way they're approaching it, scoring 10 goals in the last 2 games, without playing possession football. they're not a possession football team. They keep possession, but it's different from yesteryear in terms of Spain. You're right. It would be very interesting to see them progress if they do.
We've
and
seen
it will
this
tell
is
us
for
the
the
way
first
forward.
time, the Spanish team is playing with 3 outright forwards. We have seen always in a 4-4-2 combination to play with, but this time around we are watching like even Ferran Torres was brilliant.
4-3-3,
Olmo was brilliant at the top. So I mean, all these youngsters coming well. I think this will bring smile on the face of Chinmoy for sure.
Yes, I'm always there.
Mahesh Bhusal,
So it is 2-2. Rajoshi and me are Spain, and these two guys are they're
Belgium, Italy, and England. We almost begin kind of there. Mahesh Bhusal has already picked up his dark horse, like Euro 2016 with Portugal. He says Czech Republic could be a dark horse. Well, who knows? Like they're picking on Denmark.
You never know.
So that's
you
going to
never
be.
know.
You never know what you do once you're into the last 4. What happens from there? You never know. Never know. This is football, and we've seen a couple of solid upsets already. But thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. It's been an enterprising chat once again. We'll of course come with a lot more build up to the Euro quarterfinals starting tomorrow, and of course there's one more day of quarterfinals the day after. We'll get back all our panelists for another riveting conversation. But thank you so much for joining us on Sports Today, Chinmoy, Chirag, Shumon, and of course a lot of comments and questions from our viewers. Do keep them coming, and of course we promise to bring you coverage around the Euro 2020, the Olympics, Indian cricket teams in England, and of course remember there's the shorter formats team in Sri Lanka as well. Plenty of action over the next several months, and it's all going to unfold on Sports Today. Thank you so much for watching. Do tune in every day and subscribe to Sports Today. Thank you.